Breaking, Russia just sent Britain a warning, and this time NATO isn't laughing it off. What happened in the last 72 hours has security experts calling it the most serious threat since the Cold War, and the British government, they're scrambling. Here's what they're not telling you. Late Wednesday night, British intelligence intercepted an encrypted signal from Moscow at first glance. Routine traffic, standard diplomatic chatter. But as analysts worked through the layers of code, something changed. The message buried inside wasn't routine at all. It was direct, it was personal, and it was aimed straight at London. The words were clear. If Britain continues its current moves in Eastern Europe, expect consequences not seen in decades. No ambiguity, no diplomatic softening, just a cold, calculated warning. Within 2 hours, Parliament went into emergency session. Doors closed, phones locked down. Foreign Secretary David Lammy walked into the room, dropped the intelligence file on the table and said, "If this is real, we're on the edge." Not the edge of tension, the edge of something much worse. If you want the full story as this crisis unfolds, hit that subscribe button now. We're tracking every single development in real time, and you'll want to see what happens next. Here's where things get complicated. Days before Putin's warning arrived, Britain had quietly approved a major defence package to the Baltic states' arms shipments, advanced surveillance tech, military training programmes, all of it moving through Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. Moscow had publicly called that exact move a red line weeks earlier. London sent the shipments anyway. Now the blowback has arrived, and it's not just words. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, generals scrambled onto emergency video calls. Allies across Europe joined within minutes, but the tone in those calls wasn't confident. It was tense. Because the question being asked wasn't if Putin's threat was real. It was how to respond without triggering something far worse. Here's the thing. Most people don't understand about modern geopolitics. Conflict doesn't begin with missiles anymore. It doesn't start with troops crossing borders. It starts with encrypted messages, cyber intrusions, financial pressure, and warnings like this one. Social media exploded almost instantly. Hashtags like #Britain threatened and #. Cold War II trended worldwide within hours. Some users dismissed it as Russian propaganda. Others saw it as the opening move of a much larger game. But while the internet argued something far more serious was unfolding behind closed doors, inside number 10 Downing Street, Prime Minister Keir Starmer faced an impossible decision: confront Putin publicly and risk open escalation, or stay silent and appear weak on the global stage. Both options carried massive consequences, and his cabinet completely split. Reports from inside the room say one senior minister stood up and said, "We're not America. We can't take on Russia alone. We need to think carefully about what we're risking here." Another minister shot back immediately. "If we back down now, Britain loses all credibility. Every ally we have will question whether we can be trusted." The argument wasn't just political, it was about survival, about what kind of country Britain wants to be in a world where power is shifting fast. Meanwhile, at Windsor Castle, King Charles III was given a full intelligence briefing. Aides say he read through the file slowly, asked a few clarifying questions, then sat in complete silence for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, he looked up and asked one question that nobody in the room knew how to answer. Is this how it begins? He wasn't asking about policy. He was asking about history, about whether this moment would be remembered as the spark that changed everything. By Thursday morning, the situation escalated fast. British reconnaissance satellites detected unusual Russian naval movements in the North Sea. Warships repositioning, submarines surfacing briefly before disappearing again. The Royal Air Force scrambled jets to monitor the activity. The Ministry of Defence released a public statement urging calm, but anyone reading between the lines could see the panic. Analysts across Europe started warning that Britain was entering what they call a high-risk phase. One misstep, one miscalculation, and this could spiral into open confrontation. Not war necessarily, but something close enough to feel like it. Then came the first major leak. An anonymous whistleblower operating under the name Watchman published a set of classified documents on a secure forum used by journalists and activists. The files were explosive. They revealed that Britain had been running a covert cyber operation for months, the code name Operation Ash and Tide. According to the leak, British intelligence had been targeting Russian energy infrastructure, power grids, gas pipelines, communication networks. The goal, retaliation for Moscow's interference in Baltic trade routes and alleged election meddling across Europe. If the documents were authentic, it meant Britain had struck first and Putin's warning wasn't a threat. It was revenge. Russian state media picked up the story within hours. Kremlin spokespeople held press conferences pointing to the leak as proof that London had provoked the entire crisis. In a matter of hours, the global narrative shifted. Britain went from victim to aggressor, from defender to instigator. Back in London, the pressure intensified. A second message arrived through official diplomatic channels. This time, it wasn't encrypted. It wasn't hidden. Putin's spokesman released a public statement. British provocations will be met with proportional responses. The timeline and nature of those responses will be determined by us. 30 minutes after that statement went live, something strange happened. The London Stock Exchange experienced a sudden glitch. Trading systems froze for exactly 3 minutes. Data disappeared. Billions in market value flickered off screens before slowly returning. Officials called it a technical malfunction, a server error. But security analysts saw something else entirely. Embedded in the system logs was a digital signature, one that matched known Russian cyber units. The message was silent, invisible to most people, but devastatingly clear to those who understood. We can reach you anytime, anywhere. Intelligence officials started whispering what nobody wanted to say out loud. Russia wasn't threatening traditional warfare. They were demonstrating control, access, the ability to hit Britain's economy, infrastructure and public trust without ever firing a shot. And the scariest part, someone somewhere had given them that access. Then came the bombshell that changed everything. A leaked MI6 internal memo suggested that Russia's cyber attack on the stock exchange may have been assisted by someone inside the British government, a mole, a double agent embedded deep within Westminster itself. If true, the implications were staggering. Britain's enemy wasn't just across the border in Moscow. It was sitting in cabinet meetings, walking the halls of Parliament, listening to classified briefings. Security went into full lockdown mode. Ministers were subjected to emergency background checks. Phones were confiscated and forensically analysed. Offices were swept for bugs. Hard drives were cloned and examined line by line. The image of a calm, unified government collapsed almost overnight into suspicion, paranoia and fear. By Thursday evening, yet another leak surfaced online. This time, it was a partial transcript of a private phone call between senior UK government officials and advisors at Buckingham Palace. Most of it was redacted, but buried in the middle of the document was a single line that sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. The line, allegedly spoken by a Russian operative during an intercepted communication read, "If the government will not listen, perhaps the Crown will." The threat had reached the monarchy, not metaphorically, directly. For the first time in modern history, the British royal family had become an explicit target in a global power struggle. Security at all royal residences was immediately reinforced. Communication systems were swept and upgraded. Scheduled public appearances were quietly reviewed and in some cases postponed. King Charles's closest advisors grew increasingly concerned. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was personal. NATO analysts now describe what's happening as fourth-generation psychological warfare. Putin isn't trying to start a traditional war. He's trying to fracture Britain from the inside, to expose the divisions between government and crown, between political leaders and public trust, between those who want confrontation and those who fear it. And the disturbing truth, it's working. Then, against the advice of nearly everyone around him, King Charles made a bold decision. He would address the nation directly. No political handlers, no spin doctors, just him speaking from Windsor, offering calm in the middle of chaos. When the broadcast aired on Friday evening, the entire country seemed to stop. His voice was measured, steady but heavy with purpose. "We have faced threats before," he said, "and we have endured. Britain's strength has never come from fear or anger. It comes from unity, from standing together when the world grows uncertain. It was meant to reassure, to steady the nerves of millions watching. But for many, it did something else. It confirmed that the threat was real, that the danger wasn't being exaggerated, that even the king felt it necessary to speak. And then, just minutes after the broadcast ended, chaos struck again. A major power grid in northern England collapsed without warning. 500,000 homes went dark. Street lights went out, trains ground to a halt. Emergency